Tonight, I want to take you somewhere far from here, a place where the air is thick with secrets, where the past lingers like a shadow, and where love defies time itself. This is the story of the Whispering Manor, a tale of longing, mystery, and choices that echo through eternity. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let yourself drift as we step into a world where whispers call your name and love waits in the quietest corners. Her name was Eliza, a woman who had spent her life chasing silence. A writer, a dreamer, someone who found comfort in solitude. When she learned of the manor, hidden deep in the hills, far from the hum of the modern world, it felt like a calling. The place had been abandoned for years, yet it held a reputation for beauty. And something else. Whispers of a curse. The road there was winding and narrow, lined with trees so thick they blotted out the sky. When the carriage came to a stop, Eliza stepped out, her boots crunching on gravel. And there it was, the Whispering Manor. Its spires reached high into the mist, ivy crawling across its stone walls like veins feeding a forgotten heart. The iron gates creaked open as if the place had been expecting her. She hesitated, the weight of the air pressing against her chest, and then stepped inside. The halls were vast and quiet, except for the soft groan of the wooden floor beneath her feet. Chandeliers hung like frozen memories, and the scent of something faintly sweet, roses, maybe, drifted through the air. In the library she found it, a desk, untouched by time. On it sat a journal, its leather cover cracked with age. She opened it, and the name on the first page stopped her breath. Adrian. That was all it said. Just a name. But somehow it felt familiar. That night, her dreams carried her somewhere strange. She was in the garden, standing under the moonlight. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of roses. And there, in the distance, stood a man. Dark hair, piercing green eyes, and a smile that seemed to hold both sorrow and hope. He looked at her as though he'd been waiting forever. "Eliza," he whispered. And then she woke up. The next morning, the dream clung to her like a memory she couldn't quite place. She wandered the halls, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. And then she heard it. A whisper. Faint, almost too quiet to notice. "Eliza!" She froze, her heart pounding. "Who's there?" she called out, but no one answered. The air grew colder as she followed the sound, her breath visible in the dim light. The whispers led her back to the library, where the journal still sat on the desk. This time, a single red rose lay beside it. She reached for the flower, and that's when she saw him. He stood by the window, his figure glowing faintly in the moonlight. The man from her dream. He looked at her with a mix of sadness and longing. "I've been waiting," he said, his voice soft, almost like it wasn't meant for her to hear. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Adrian," he replied simply. "And you? You're the one I've been waiting for." The room seemed to hold its breath. She wanted to run, but something about him kept her rooted to the spot. He wasn't like anything she'd ever seen. He was ethereal. Not quite real, but not entirely gone either. "I don't understand," she said. "You don't need to." Adrian whispered. "Not yet." Over the next few days, Adrian appeared more often. Sometimes in the library, sometimes in the garden, always when she was alone. He told her pieces of his story, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. He had lived long ago, a man of privilege, bound by duty, but consumed by a forbidden love. The woman he loved had been taken from him, and in his despair, he had cursed himself to remain here, waiting for her return. "But she never came back," he said one night, his voice breaking. "And so I've waited. Alone." Eliza felt her heart ache for him. His pain was tangible, like a storm she could feel in her chest. "Why me?" she asked softly. Adrian looked at her, his green eyes filled with something she couldn't quite name. "I don't know," he said, "but you're here, and that means something." Their connection deepened with every moment. She couldn't explain it, but she felt drawn to him, as if their souls had known each other before. But the closer they grew, the heavier the air became, and the whispers around the manor grew louder, angrier. One evening, as they stood together in the garden, she asked him the question she'd been dreading. "Is there a way to break the curse?" He hesitated, his gaze fixed on the roses blooming at their feet. "There is," he said finally. "But if I'm set free, I'll have to leave, and I can't stay here without you." Her chest tightened. She didn't want to lose him, but she couldn't let him stay trapped either. On her last night at the manor, Eliza made her choice. They stood together in the garden, the moonlight bathing them in silver. The air was still, heavy with the scent of roses. "I can't let you stay like this," she said, tears streaming down her face, "even if it means losing you." Adrian reached out, his hand brushing her cheek. For the first time, he felt warm, real. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me something I thought I'd never feel again." And then he began to fade, slowly, like the petals of a flower falling away. The garden grew quiet, the whispers stopped, and he was gone. Eliza stood there for a long time, the weight of his absence pressing against her chest. When she finally left the next morning, the manor felt different, lighter, as if it had been holding its breath all these years. As she walked away, she turned back one last time, and for just a moment she thought she saw him, standing in the garden, watching her with that same quiet smile. She smiled back, knowing he was free. And in her heart, she knew that love, real love, never truly fades. Do like and subscribe this channel if you love your puppy.